Welcome everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah. Welcome back everybody to the A Little Less Fear podcast, and welcome back Ethan Levy. Welcome back to the A Little Less Fear podcast. This time we are talking about the very first international trans and non-binary conference called Do Something Identities Conference. Oh my goodness, it's going to be held on May 13th, 2022. What can you tell us about this first international? Why is it a first?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. So at least to our knowledge, it is the first international conference that's dedicated to trans, non-binary, and many more non-cis identities community, where it's actually run, organized, and every single person who's involved in making this happen is a trans, non-binary, and or another non-cis identity. There's many conferences out there that are international conferences that are dedicated to this community, but they have at least one, if not multiple people who are cisgendered. And a lot of the time, the organizations that are heavily focused on where kind of establish the global standard of care for our community is typically run by cisgendered people or binary trans people, most who are white passing, able-bodied, neurotypical, all holding more privileged identities, where this one is really prioritizing our community members who aren't represented, who typically don't have their experience cared for or even a place for it to be shared or educated about. And so literally my attorney, the marketing team, every presenter, every single person involved in this project is paid and is trans, non-binary, and or another non-cis identity.
That's incredible. I can't even tell you how many times I actually felt like I didn't belong in so many different like festivities or conferences and stuff, because when this was a given topic, because a lot of the times I saw that there, or I guess you could say maybe I stereotyped that there were a lot of cisgendered people, but I mean, now that it's been confirmed that this possibly is the very first international, it's going to make so many of us feel welcomed and comfortable. Thanks for getting this together. How did you even come up with this?
So I've spent, let's call it decades, fighting the mental and medical health fields and the people who standardize the care of how we deserve to be treated or what we have access to. And all of that has just been wasted breath. Nothing has changed. Essentially it's just been wasted effort. So a close friend of mine a couple years ago said, stop wasting your energy on combating people who don't value what you have to share and aren't going to change. So I took that time and that energy and I dedicated to trying to create something that I want to exist that doesn't already exist, so we can globalize the standard of care that truly is affirming. So for example, if we think about kind of like the idea of if, let's say, a cisgendered woman wanted to go have breast implants, there is no need for any type of mental health evaluation to determine if this person's sane enough to make decisions for themselves to have access to that operation. But a trans person on average may have to go to therapy for about a year. And if we think about how problematic that is, a cheap version of therapy is $100 a session. $100 4 times a week for a year is extremely expensive. And in the US, the average yearly salary of a trans person is $10,000. So how are we supposed to pay for the care that we need when we don't have access to it? And then if we look at what the CDC released, 1 in 3 trans people will attempt to die by suicide before the age of 18. And this number significantly decreases if we have access to healthcare, to people using our names, using our pronouns. So the most basic thing that cisgendered people have available to them is what could literally be the difference between life and death in our community. Yet nobody is creating an equitable, accessible way for our community to have access to the most basic care. So I'm really trying to change the world, the way that the world views us and how it creates access for us, so that we're not dying at such young ages and in high rates.
And so the goal of this conference is to change the standard of care for trans and non-binary individuals?
Well, there's a lot of different goals to it. So there's that goal. There's
Which is a
creating.
great, incredible goal. I mean, that would be amazing. It is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's to create more awareness of even basic little things that we could be doing, whether we're a parent, a partner, an ally. There's also going to be presentations on just our own self-healing, to be able to affirm ourselves and stop questioning who we are. If we think about it, how many, trans, non-binary, many more non-cis people do we know who constantly question, or at any point question, am I really real, or is there something wrong with me? Am I mentally ill? How great would it be if we didn't have to question our own sanity when we're exploring and sharing with the world who we are? And then another big thing that this conference is attempting to do is to model to the world how education should be about identities. It should be done by the people who are part of that community, and not just a copy and paste of the same person who looks the same. We don't want white binary people who are not out around their identities. We want an array of experiences and realities to be able to provide education, not just by the same privileged identities, but then also that we should always be paid for the labor that we're engaging in. So many times are trans, non-binary, many more non-cis identity people are invited to educate people about who we are without ever being compensated or believed, and then being tone policed and micromanaged as to what we can and cannot share. So all the presenters, when I did the call for proposals, the only thing that they had, there were two requirements. You had to engage from an anti-oppressive positionality and always be working towards unlearning harmful engagement. And two, hold a non-binary, trans, and or non-cis identity. There was no other requirements, no requirements of education or background, because I wanted it to be a place where people got to share their realities and share to the world how to engage with our communities without limiting what people can and cannot share based on what they've had access to.
And so with that said, what types of topics can we expect for this first International Trans and Non-Binary Conference?
So I will share a few, but I do encourage people to go to vanethanlevy.com/conference, where you can see all the different presenters, the schedule, as well as the different topics. But there'll be things like presentations on decolonizing as means of gender rights, disordered eating, identities through music, addressing transphobia, identities and religion. There'll be intuition and internal reflection, kink and poly, exploring neo-pronouns, allyships, how to engage in affirming therapy, disabilities justice, self-compassion, having inclusive engagement in education, as well as assessment and diagnosis, and a few other presentations. So
wow, this sounds incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, there's just an array of ways in which people can engage. Sorry, I never know which to pick, because there's so many exciting ones that including like addressing transphobia throughout the ecosystem, right? Like, how often are we thinking about these topics? One's called Don't Shame Me, Identities, Neurodivergence, Kink, and Consensual Non-Monogamy. We barely get any representation as a trans, non-binary, and or another non-cis identity. Now adding these different layers of being neurodivergent, being autistic, engaging in kink, engaging in non-monogamy, or even trans in the scripture, right? People never are not really aware of how trans identities are even in the scriptures in the Old and the New Testament. So I'm really hoping to have an array of topics that are going to assist with people in the different fields that they're in, or the different roles that you play. It doesn't matter if you're a professor, if you're a clinician, you could be a friend, a parent, a trans person yourself. I'm hoping that there'll be a topic that is going to be helpful to every single person who is wanting to or going to attend.
Van, what is neurodivergent for our listeners who are hearing this word for the first time?
So neurodivergent is almost like an umbrella term for people who are not neurotypical. So it could be somebody who has ADHD, somebody who's autistic, somebody who has different ways of learning and engaging. There's not just one way to define it, but it's basically, I would encourage people to Google what does neurodivergence mean, or connect with a disability justice organization, and of course pay them to provide that education. But I do appreciate that question, and I wish that I could answer it more directly. But just like anything else, there isn't one way to answer something when it impacts so many different identities.
Got it. And what about, will there be any type of translators for ASL for the deaf community?
So what we will have available, both captioning, but also in the registration form, we ask if there's any accommodations that are needed. So if there are ASL folks who are requested, we will make sure to have them present. Thus far, we haven't had any requests for that, so we haven't secured any ASL interpreters. However, that is something that we can make available if it is requested.
That's excellent. And how long will this conference be?
So it's a pretty long conference. It goes from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in that Pacific Daylight Time. So I think that's 9 hours. I'm not good at math on the fly.
And the beautiful thing about this is that it's virtual, so anybody in the world can attend, correct?
Yeah, we wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, as long as you have access to internet, you can attend, as well as for folks with disabilities who may not have been able to potentially even leave their home, especially because a lot of us are stuck in our home with this pandemic. But even beyond this pandemic or before this pandemic, there were folks who didn't have access to be able to attend these conferences due to limitations. And so I'm doing my best to address all these different barriers that I'm aware of, while also recognizing that I do hold a lot of privilege, and there's many ways in which I'm not going to be aware of how this conference isn't accessible, while being open to any feedback so that I can do my best to create a more accessible conference.
I can also see how important this conference would be for cis-identified people who really don't know much about the community. Well, I mean, I can assume that there's going to be some cis people attending as well.
Yes, I'm hoping so, that there'll be a lot of cis people. Just as much as we deserve to heal and have spaces for ourselves, we also need true allies. And often people think an ally is because you have a flag or you call yourself that, but an ally is not a label, it's an action. An ally is a term that is given to somebody, but it doesn't mean just because you've been given this term that you're now an ally forever and for everybody. It's just that situation from that person in that moment. So allyship is truly showing up and constantly learning ways to be better and to do better, so we can create these safer spaces for our community.
This is wonderful. I mean, just like Latinos have their Latin Grammys, it's like, it's kind of like, okay, finally there's a conference that's going to be for trans and non-binary people. That's why people do what they do, and they become inclusive in order to feel safe and validated and to reach more, because the bigger the population, the more light is created and the more we can share. So that's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. That is the goal, is how to constantly learn how to be safer and how to learn the ways in which we are not safe for folks, so that we can constantly be doing better, versus this idea that we're a monolith and here are the standards and that it doesn't shift and we stick to it. It's no, the more that we create safer spaces, there are more identities and ways in which people feel safer to come forward to share, hey, no, this is actually really problematic, so that we can make those shifts to constantly grow and do and be better.
Exactly. And lower the crime rate, because the more we educate people, the more everybody will have a little bit more peace in their heart and in their mind.
Yes, and the potentiality of the longer our life expectancy can be, and the reduced amount of deaths within our community.
I agree.
I think last year there were more trans people murdered than there were days in the year in the world.
Oh my goodness, that's awful.
Yeah, I think it was close to 2 people a day, if not more. I can't remember. And those are just the ones who were reported. A lot of the times, even in the US, there are states that prevent us from reporting them as hate crimes, just because of laws that exist.
Wow. Well, I'm really glad that you're definitely a pioneer to help be a catalyst for this positive change within our community. Van, you're always sticking up. Thanks so much for being such an incredible ally, speaking of allies, and a founder and a CEO and all kinds of stuff all in one. I'm just really, really proud of you, and seeing that you just continue to plow right through to be a voice for us all, even though it hurts to speak so much. But thank you. Is there anything else you would like us to know?
Please share with others. Please buy a ticket. Please sponsor the event. All of this is being funded from my entire life savings, which isn't even that much. And so the more that people can assist financially, the more likely that this can be a yearly or even bi-yearly event to continue the education on creating these safer spaces for our community and a safer world for our community.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's definitely going to take off, and it will definitely be at least annually for sure.
Fingers crossed.
Oh yeah, wherever there's a need, there's a go. There's a green light. Let's do this. Everybody, this is going to be on May 13th, 2022, tongue twister for me. Please go on vanethanlevy.com, correct? It's / conference.
Yeah, vanethanlevy.com. I guess I get them confused whether it's forward or /, but the line that angles from the bottom on the left and goes to the right.
Okay,
Conference.
great. And get your tickets. Let's all be allies. Let's support everybody. Let's support one another. And let's keep going. Let's keep going strong.
I would like to share a bit about the flag. Do we have a couple minutes for me to share?
Yeah, we do. Beautiful flag. I see you're wearing a shirt of the flag, and I see the flags in the background. Could you explain the color? I see they're like upside down than what most people would usually envision.
Yeah, thank you. So I really try to be intentional with the amount of identities that I try to represent and the ways in which they are represented. So in the background, on the top part is the non-binary flag, but it's upside down, and it's intentionally upside down. So it prioritizes our most historically and currently excluded members of our community. And then the portion of the trans flag is at the bottom in the background to demonstrate the uplifting of our most impacted members of our community. So the color blue is at the base because our societal constructs of blue are often connected to masculinity. And in the world we live in, it's the safest to be binary and male. So that's why it's at the bottom, kind of supporting the rest of our community. And then in the middle is an infinity sign, and it's written in binary coding, which is ironic because I'm non-binary,
Yeah.
but that's a computer coding that is a language that's based on ones and zeros. So what I did was I made the big circles ones and the small circles zeros, and it actually reads from the middle dot, which is yellow, to the left, down, under, to the right, and back to the middle. And it spells out DSI for the name of the conference, the Do Something Identities. And it reads from right to left to represent Semitic cultures, because Semitic cultures read from right to left while still centering our most impacted members. And it was intentional that the black and brown dots are on top and prioritized. And then also that infinity symbol in the middle was selected because it's often used to represent autistic communities, while having the gradient colors of the rainbow to represent the many identities in our community and other communities inside of all the circles. And if you go to the site, all the photos, including presenters, have accessibility descriptions for folks who are not able to see the photos, but will be able to have a way to know what's being depicted.
Wow, that's incredible. You put so much mindful, thoughtful work into this. It's beautiful, and I love that it's an infinity symbol. I mean, all in all, because it encompasses humanity. It's beautiful.
Definitely trying to, and recognizing that I will mess up and I will erase community members due to the privilege I hold, while still working towards creating more awareness for myself so I can do better and be better.
That's awesome. Those are the wise words from Van Ethan Levy. Thanks again for being on A Little Less Fear podcast. I wish you the best. I know this is going to be incredible, this conference, and it's definitely going to be pivotal for our culture, for humanity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And of course, we always need one shot of the famous Sushi, who is hiding his face.
Where's Sushi? Sushi?
Sushi,
baby. Thank you. Thanks so much. And I'll make sure that everything's going to be posted when this is posted up. All the information that needs to be sent, all the links and everything.
Thank you so much for having me, and always a pleasure seeing you.
Absolutely a blessing as well. Thank you so much.